Lathander, the Morning Lord, is one of the most popular deities in the Forgotten Realms, but his story is not a very clear one. He is much beloved of the common people, and is in many ways the go-to good-aligned deity of the realms. But, as I've once explained, the god's behavior is colored by their limited perspectives on the world. As powerful as they are, they cannot see outside the box they have been put into, and Lathander is no different in this respect. With that said, let us now explore the god Lathander together. As stated, Lathander is one of the most popular deities in the realms, and for good reason. He is the god of dawn, renewal, birth, spring, as well as vitality and creativity, and by extension, hope. Lathander appears as a young and slim man, burnished by the sun, wielding a mace and radiating the light of dawn. He represents the best of humanity in his strivings to improve the world and make it a better place. And his dedication to good is untarnished by considerations of either law or chaos. He wishes the best for the world and those in it, and he is willing at times to go to great lengths to make it happen, even if he is sometimes blind to the results and the process of getting there, something we will return to later. Despite his association with the sun, Lathander is not, in fact, a god of the sun. Rather, he is the god of dawn. He is the promise of a new beginning, and the aspect of the sun that banishes the darkness and gives way to light. And with that, the promise of new life, hence his governance over the domain of birth. And it is for this reason that of all the deities in Faerun, save perhaps for Celeborn, he is the most opposed to the creation and existence of the undead. In former editions of D&D, specialty of priests of Lathander wielded greater power against the undead, and could turn them at a higher level than other priests. As detailed in a previous video about the nature of the gods, gods are the embodiment of certain virtues, vices, and areas of life, and that very fact can make them blind to nuance, subtlety, and sometimes just outright limits them in their ability to see anything from a perspective that lies outside of their domain. In Lathander's case, the counterpart to his exuberance, optimism, and hopefulness is his tendency to fall prey to vanity, excessive enthusiasm, and even zealotry at times. Always believing in the good, above all in his own goodness, this has on more than one occasion led to destructive acts that were more harmful than beneficial, ignoring the consequences of his actions, and being resistant to countervailing viewpoints. And oftentimes, Lathander takes the view of his way or the highway. In essence, he is a reflection of a well-meaning youth, which more often than not is not tempered by wisdom, and since he is divine, he lacks the ability to grow and change in this regard. He simply hopes for the best and attacks problems head-on, not infrequently heedless of the consequences. But that is the price of progress, or so Lathander might argue with you. Whilst most deities of the realms have a clear history of their origins, such as Mistra, Shar, and Selûne, Lathander, despite his importance in the pantheon, is not one of them. So there is no clear picture of Lathander's origins, but one persistent theory has been that of Lathander ultimately being an aspect of the sun god Amanator, who rules directly over the sun. So much so that the Church of Lathander later developed a heresy within its confines in an effort to unite the two deities. More realistically, however, he is probably an interloper deity, as many of Faerun's gods are today, whose arrival was never kept track of particularly well. The first semi-concrete event we are aware of concerning Lathander is an event called the Dawn Cataclysm, the date of which is not precisely known. Indeed, it might even be incorrect to refer to it as a historical event proper, instead perhaps being a cosmological event. But it did have earth-shatteringly important consequences for the realms, and above all for the structure of the Faerunian pantheon. Even the details of what happened in this cosmological event are not particularly clear, and historians, cosmologists, and chroniclers of the realms have not been successful in documenting the details of the Dawn Cataclysm. There is no record of mention prior to this, and as we do not even know where to locate it on the timeline, it is even more difficult to say. But based on estimates, it seems that Lathander first became truly active as a deity after the fall of Netheril. What was the Dawn Cataclysm? The Dawn Cataclysm was an ill-fated attempt, largely directed by Lathander, to reshape the Faerunian pantheon to his liking. The details of this event are unfortunately, as I've already stated, not well known, as there is no canon answer as to what happened, but the results were a restructuring of the Faerunian pantheon. The most salient consequence of this cataclysm was that the ancient deity of luck, Tyche or Tyche, was split into Tymora and Bishaba, the goddess of good luck and misfortune respectively, and an ancient deity of pragmatism and reason, who was Helm's lover, was also destroyed. And there was a reshuffling of the hierarchy of the pantheon after this. But we do know that Lathander grew greatly in importance after these events, and rose to the prominence he enjoys today. As little as we know about the Dawn Cataclysm, it is a testament to Lathander's "you need to break some eggs in order to make an omelet" philosophy, with his seemingly good intentions resulting in less than desirable outcomes for most involved. One of the greatest points of confusion is the nature of the relationship between Lathander and Amanator, with Amanator being the ancient Netherese deity of the sun, the law, and to some extent, time. Amanator, however, had a very different perspective from Lathander, being primarily dedicated to the preservation and the prosecution of the law, and therefore was thoroughly lawful neutral, versus Lathander's unbridled neutral goodness. But there is a parallel in their dedication to their respective philosophies, and it is for this reason, among others, such as the association with the sun, that some worshippers naturally connected the two deities. One of the more unusual strains of thought, and indeed heresies, in the Church of Lathander was the idea that Lathander was in fact the god Amanator, and that there was a singular solar deity that expressed himself in iterations, similar to the dawn sun, the sun at high noon, and dusk, and that Lathander represented the youthful aspect of the sun, specifically the dawn, and that it was simply a matter of time until Amanator would return to reclaim the mantle of the sun in all of its glory. This was sometimes referred to as the risen sun heresy, and a somewhat different heresy that nonetheless overlapped was called the three-faced sun, which theorized that Lathander was in fact a tripartite deity, encompassing the phases of the sun, with Lathander representing dawn, Amanator the high sun of noon, and Jurgel or Merkel representing the dusk. And an event that seemed to support this was the casting of an incredibly powerful spell called Amanator's Eternal Sun in the city of Eversalt, that caused the rising of a miniature sun on the horizon within a 150-mile radius in the year 1374 DR. Somewhat later, it seemed as if the prophecies had come to pass. After the spell plague of 1385 DR, the heresy appeared to have come true, as Lathander seemingly disappeared, and Amanator, long thought dead, or at the very least missing in action, returned apparently now as an amalgam of both Lathander and the sun god, being lawful good. This was to remain the case until the emergence of 5th edition D&D, because there is good reason to believe that even though much of this might have been semi-canonical, it nonetheless failed because 4th edition itself failed, and 5th edition, along with the events called the Second Sundering, brought Lathander back as an independent deity, concurrent with the reshaping of Amanator back into his old, strictly lawful self, meaning now that both deities exist side by side as separate entities, and we may never know if this was simply a consequence of the bad marketing decisions on the part of Wizards of the Coast at the time, or just a normal attempt to retcon poor lore decisions. Regardless, as it stands now, both Lathander and Amanator are their old selves, and very much distinct. In terms of his relationships with other deities, Lathander gets along well with a good many. Lathander and Shantea, the goddess of agriculture, have been romantically involved for centuries, and see each other as kindred spirits with many of the same goals and perspectives. And Lathander is allied with many of the good aligned deities, or otherwise creative ones, including Gond, Tymora, Tyr, Torm, Ilmater, Soon, Seluna, Agma, Kellumbor, and Maliki, and is naturally opposed to evil gods such as Talos, Bane, and the historical gods of death such as Merkel. Although not an outright foe, because of Lathander's involvement in the Dawn Cataclysm, Helm nurses a grudge against him for the loss of his lover, the goddess Myrdain. The Church of Lathander is predictably modeled on the principles of Lathander himself. The Church does not have a strict hierarchy, because Lathander is solely concerned with good works, but there is a loose hierarchy of clerics and worshippers that operate on the principle of mutual respect for each other and their experience. Followers of Lathander are encouraged to provide aid to others and foster innovation to improve the lives of folk in the realms. They work closely, for example, with clerics of Shantea the Earth Mother to promote agricultural works, as well as foster creative projects and athletic events. Above all, followers of Lathander are driven to oppose the forces of evil, and in a similar fashion to clerics, and followers of Kelemvor, albeit for different reasons, undead being the antithesis of life and new beginnings, are diametrically opposed to the philosophy of the Church, and are therefore sought out and destroyed at every opportunity. Like many good Alliant deities, Lathander sponsors paladins, but as he is not lawful, paladins of Lathander are less rigid than many paladins. Nonetheless, organizations such as the Order of the Aster are considered the military arm of the Church and engage in much of the heavy lifting when it comes to taking the fight to evildoers, promoting Church goals such as defense and the recovery of important good Alliant artifacts. Lathander also sponsors a monastic order called the Order of the Sun Soul, which originally worshipped a Monitor during the days of Netheril, but switched over to the worship of Lathander after the fall of Netheril. For all of his flaws, Lathander remains one of the most familiar and most beloved of good deities in the realms, worshipped and admired for his optimism, hope, and benevolence, and will likely maintain this position for the foreseeable future. As always, thank you for tuning in. Please leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe as it really helps out the channel, much appreciated, and I will check you out next time. Take care.